We just got a big Quest 3 update that comes with some huge changes and awesome new features, as well as some massive VR game news that you don't want to miss. So let's dive right into it. And starting off this update directly is a very long awaited improvement that is also known as the new Surface keyboard feature. Because this now makes it possible for you to add a virtual keyboard on top of any flat surface, such as a table or desk. And as you can see on the video on screen, thanks to the headset's use of hand tracking, the overall accuracy is remarkably high. But best of all is that besides just being able to type a lot faster this way, it also feels a lot more natural to rest your hands on a table compared to that floating virtual keyboard that we had beforehand. And while that was also a great alternative of taking your real-life keyboards into virtual reality and being able to type on those instead, this feature was sadly still limited to very specific keyboard types, while also being far from accurate if you were using any of the non-supported ones in the first place. So overall, this new Surface keyboard is a very welcome addition and has actually been a feature that Meta has been working on for quite some time. And to be able to unlock it, you'll need to turn it on under your advanced settings. But maybe the biggest change that you probably have already noticed is that Meta made the new Navigator UI interface the default option for any headset with the V85 update or higher. And while a lot of Quest users already had access to this new user interface, until now, it was still possible to change it with the original version instead. But that is now a thing of the past, because not only will the Navigator become the new standard, with it, the horizon feed, which is the window that normally opens up when you start up your headset, and that gives you some world recommendations as well as games, will now also be completely removed. And with that, Mark Zuckerberg is trying to make the menu system of the Quest headsets look a lot more streamlined and similar to something like that of the Apple Vision Pro. But moving on. Another cool new feature that comes with this update, and that is specifically for the Quest 3S, is that it will now be possible to remap your action button to whatever you wish to. Now, for those who don't know, this action button previously only served one basic function, and that was to switch between mixed reality and VR. But since this can also be done by simply selecting it in your quick settings menu or by double tapping the side of your head strap, it is nice to get the possibility to make this button more functional by being able to personalize it to your own needs. But moving on, another small but great quality of life improvement is that you can now finally delete your photos and videos in bulk inside your Horizon OS gallery, because beforehand you only could get rid of one at a time in general. And that was becoming quite a pain, especially for those who like to record a lot of their gameplay. So with this new multi-select tool, this can now be done a lot quicker. But besides all these big improvements, this update also came with some sad news. Because as you might have heard, Meta shut down 3 of their own acquired studios, known as Twisted Pixel Games, Armature Studio, and Sensory Games. And these big giants were actually responsible for some of the biggest VR experiences we had, like Deadpool VR, Resident Evil 4, and Asgard's Wrath 2 respectively. So of course, with their unexpected closure and the addition of the cancellation of a potential Batman Arkham Shadows sequel, as well as a Harry Potter VR game that was apparently in the making, the news overall came as quite a big shock to a lot of VR gamers. However, shortly after, Meta's CFO did mention in an interview that they are still building future headsets and that they still have optimism in VR. But even so, a lot of virtual reality and Quest users are also slowly shifting their eyes to Valve's upcoming Steam frame, with hopes that it will boost and also rival Meta so that they can both keep pushing VR forward. However, we luckily did also have some big VR game news that you don't want to miss. But before we get into that, let's have a quick word from the company that made this video possible. Because none other than Cat VR, who are known for creating VR treadmills that look like they come straight out of Ready Player One, are once again taking virtual reality to the next level. Because while we are normally limited by the boundary system inside our VR experiences, it is Cat VR that has created these VR treadmills that let you run and jump without any limitation. And since their most recent version, which is known as the C2 Plus Enhanced, is compatible with every VR headset that you can think of, it is also often considered as the dream upgrade for any VR user. And they even go so far that it has things like haptic feedback built into it, as well as a vehicle hub, which will make it feel even more realistic when you're racing on a track or flying through the sky. And as a cherry on top, you can also use the code VRelity for a whopping $130 off on your entire purchase. So for those who are interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. And that gets us to the VR game news. And starting it off is none other than the release of the dark fantasy RPG known as Legendary Tales for the Quest headsets. Because while this epic physics-based combat game was originally only released on PC VR and PlayStation VR 2, it is now also available for both the Quest 3 and Quest 3S. And in it, You'll be going through a quest-driven storyline that is focused on extensive dungeon crawling, and it can either be experienced with friends or solo. And the campaign mode itself will take you at least over 15 hours to complete. Now, the gameplay mechanics kind of feel similar to something like Dark Souls, but then in VR. Because besides just exploring the loot-filled dungeons, you will also be fighting your way through skeletons, orcs, or even some actual boss fights. And like with any RPG, you can expect a big skill tree that lets you personalize your build, as well as a full-on hands-on crafting system that lets you create weapons and potions with materials that you've collected throughout it. But moving on, we got Fixer Undercover. Now this is probably best described as an escape room, but then with power tools such as a drill or an angle grinder. And in here, you will embody the so-called Agent 404, who is on his main mission to infiltrate the so-called Redemption prison. But unlike most escape rooms that have elegant solutions, you will instead be solving these puzzles with not only your brain, but also some brute force. But with all jokes aside, the gameplay itself is actually quite smooth, and the puzzles also never feel too difficult to solve in any situation. That being said though, you will also have a drone partner known as Winston, who will help you out whenever things get tough. But that gets us to the next VR game, which is the new big update to TVR, The Legacy of Shadow. Now for those who have played this game on launch, TVR has since put out multiple big updates that have both changed the gameplay experience as well as performance drastically. Because not only was this game originally plagued with quite a lot of bugs and some big frame drops, the overall visual quality also didn't seem to be pushing what the Quest 3 was capable of. However, with their latest update, these problems are now a thing of the past. So if you were still thinking of jumping into this title, now will probably be the best time. But we also had some sad VR game news. And that is that the crazy Cyberpunk mod made by Luke Ross has officially been taken down by the original developers of CD Projekt Red. Although, the main reason for this was that this mod was actually a paid version, with the executive Rosner even mentioning that he would be happy to see its return, but then as a free release, which Luke Ross sadly replied to that he won't be doing that at all. So instead, I hope someone else might take this project up again in the future, or that they will make an official Cyberpunk 2077 port for virtual reality. Because honestly, this game comes even more to life inside VR, so it would be sad to see it being lost forever. But some more positive VR game news is that the VR game based on the anime known as Neon Genesis Evangelion is still coming to virtual reality. And while not much was shown just yet, with the shutdown of so many other big titles recently, it is great to see that this game is still planned to be released. But that isn't all, because besides all these games, there are also a lot of big mistakes that a lot of Quest 3 and Quest 3S users make and that you need to avoid. So click on the video that you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out on that. And of course, stay awesome.